Yeah, we probably need to ask for over that. I would ask to find out if it needs a supermajority and they clarify whether a vote is to allow it to build or not to build. Something else. The TV star visits us tonight. I got 2 or 3 comments on your TV interview that my district. Yes. I think you did good on that.
Okay.
Isn't it like the 29th or something?
No, the last meeting of the year is the 20th.
Oh, it is?
It's the 20th. We're the first and third, not the second and last. No, we're first and third. All right, so let's get started with our work session because prosecuting attorney is here and he has another meeting that he needs to get to because somebody who set the agenda moved the work session up from 5:30 to 6 without telling him. I don't know who that would have been. Definitely wasn't me, but could have been someone who's like me. So with that, I would invite you to make your way here. Good to see you. Hope Thanksgiving was good.
It was great. Thank you, Mr. Elam. Council, good to be with you again. I just want to come just take a few minutes and talk to you guys. You know, anytime I get an invitation to speak to you, I'd like to accept that invitation. From a budget standpoint, I know that's the purpose of us being here tonight. You all, the executive's office, have been great to us over the years. You've given us the resources we need to do what we're doing, and I especially appreciate that because in talking to a lot of my colleagues from around the state, that's not the case everywhere. In fact, many of the officers are struggling to do what they need to do just to keep their heads above water. That's not where we're at, so I thank you for that. Thank the executive's office for that as well. I do want to tell you there are a couple things that are sort of converging right now that over the next few years I will be asking for more from you again, and I want to just explain those to you, what those are, so that when we do have to eventually make the ask, you'll at least be familiar with the reasons behind the ask. A couple things here. First of all, many of the departments in the county, nearly all of them, are either on body-worn cameras or transitioning to body-worn cameras, which I think is a great idea. Even our own department is doing that as well, which I think is fantastic. It's going to help us a lot with what we do. It's going to help them a lot. It's going to really bring some accountability into policing, but also into victimization. I think it's more often than not, it's going to demonstrate that the officers are doing the right thing. With that comes a lot of responsibility on our end. We have to receive, catalog, and manage all that data. So if you think about it, our department works with really 9 different police departments across the county, if you include the highway patrol. If the majority of those are on body-worn cameras, and they will be within the next year or two, that's going to be a tremendous stress on our staff. We know for a fact that we will need more staff, but I don't know what that's going to look like, because right now it's still very much a work in progress. The other things that we're seeing with the population increase that we're all aware of, now over 400,000, we are seeing the influx of violent crime, primarily from people that don't live in this area, but nonetheless they're here and they're committing crime here. Domestic violence is a big one. We're seeing a big, huge increase in domestic violence. I think there was an article in the Post-Dispatch the other day that talked about that. That's not unique to St. Charles County. That's really a region-wide, and there's a lot of reasons for that. COVID is a big one. We're going to need more resources to combat those. Just to put it in perspective, Judge Schneider, when you were on the bench, we had approximately 400 to 500 open domestic violence cases. Now, I can't remember how many years it's been. It hadn't been that long. We are over 5 years? Okay, I thought so. At most recent count, we're over 1,100 open domestic violence cases. And so that may not seem like a lot to you, but in terms of where we've been just in recent past, it's a big deal.
I thought 400 was a lot. 1,100 seems incredible.
It's right now it's manageable, and we can do what we need to do. But if we look at the trend, we're going to get to a point very soon where we're not going to be able to do what we need to do with the resources that we have. Those are just some of the things that are on the horizon. Again, you guys have always been great to us. The executive's office has always been great to us, and we appreciate that, and we anticipate moving forward, if we have the need, and we expect it, we will, that you guys will be equally responsive. With that, if you guys have any questions, I don't really have anything else to offer.
Mr. Cronin.
I was under the impression the vendor for the body cameras was going to take care of the storage issues that you might be, is that true? Or?
Yes and no. So it's complicated. The challenge for us is that there are at least 2 different body-worn camera systems that are out there, and they operate differently. And so that's what we're managing right now, is how do we incorporate our processes with 2 different processes from
the cities,
from a variety of different departments. Unfortunately, in several cases, we were not brought in on the front end to consult with about our needs. So basically, we've been presented with, this is our system. You got to figure out how to work with it. Our police department didn't do it that way, but several of the others have. And so we're dealing with that. But part of it is, let's say you have several officers that respond to a crime scene. If they all have body-worn cameras, our staff, somebody on our staff has to review all of that footage and figure out what's relevant, what needs to be turned over to the defense, what's not relevant. That just takes time. And unfortunately, that's a manpower thing. Machines can't do that for us.
Okay. And I got one other question for you. Your report to Elliot Davis was very good in talking about the backlog of courts cases because the Supreme Court wouldn't let the courts function during COVID. What do you need to clear that up? Because I'd much rather see money spent clearing those cases and getting people out of that jail than spend millions and millions of dollars in that jail, or on that jail, so to speak. So is there anything we can do at the council level to help you so that you don't have a 2-year backlog of cases in that jail, and we can get them, get them through the court system, whether they're guilty, innocent, or, or reformable, okay, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, right now I think we're in good shape. I think collectively, our office, the courts, corrections, I think we've done a pretty good job of ensuring that the people that are over there now are people that need to be there. There are very few people that are there on low-level offenses that can't make bond. We're okay for now in that regard. But, this being kind of an unprecedented time with COVID, I don't know when that's going to change. But I anticipate it's going to get harder.
What I was after, to get them out of there on the county dime and in the state pen on the state's dime. That's what I was talking about. Okay.
Yeah, we're in good shape right now.
Okay.
We're okay now.
All right.
I do see, the other thing I would add to that as one of the things that's on the horizon that's going to impact our current resources is that because of the census change, because of a few statutory implementations over the last year or so, we're going to have new judges here. We're going to have at least 1, maybe 3. It all kind of depends. That's just more resources we need, and so we'll cross those bridges when we get there.
Okay.
We have courtrooms for all of them?
Joanne seems to like the 6th floor quite a bit as a potential.
Available for all of them.
Some of the courtrooms might be really small.
Well, I think this room's available sometimes.
That's right.
So, and Nancy said she's used it before, so if push comes to shove, maybe.
I used the one in the jail too, don't forget.
There you go.
I did jury trials in the jail. I don't know where the jurors went to deliberate, but they came back pretty quickly usually.
Anybody else have questions? All right, with that, thanks for coming.
All right, thank you.
Good luck at your next meeting. So with that, we'll move on to any issues that the council wants to discuss in the current budget. Who wants to bring up the first issue that we have?
I got some questions. I had a list of questions I'd sent to Joanne and some of her staff members, and last year, if you guys remember, we were talking about police captains' pay, and during that conversation, we were supposed to revisit it again this year, and I don't feel it's been addressed, because when you go with the 7%, it just moves everybody up to the same level. And so my questions were, I don't know if you guys, you were copied on all of them, also we have copies here, but some of the captains, what we don't understand, Joanne, is, or I'm not sure who I'm supposed to address here, but you have police captain, one of the guys, I won't say his name, I guess we won't do that, but he's been with the county 42 years, and he's at 70%. Then you got another one, two of them been with the county 32 years, and he's at, what, 60%? And so my question would be, is how do you, it seems to me, Joanne, nobody can answer how they get to the, you got a pay range. You go from whatever that pay range is, let's use 100,000 to 140,000. Let's just use those numbers for example. And when you interview a person to take a job position, the pretense of them getting that job is based on the pay that they're allowed to make or potentially can make. And if none of these folks are getting even close to their pay range after 30 years, I truly have a real problem with that. So either one, you change the pay range to make it realistic where they're going to hit it and don't give them a false pretense, or you make them hit it. Simple as that. And so, and that goes across the board. I'm not just saying, we picked police captains because me and Cronin addressed it last year and it never got addressed. And so you still got police captains that are making equal or less than some of the lieutenants. And so, this is, up here, it's kind of hard to go through we don't want to go through each and every one, but it's like some of the lieutenants, you want them to make what they're making. I'm not, and first of all, I'm not with any of you guys, administrators or anybody, I'm not criticizing the amount of money you make, because I don't have a problem with that. I'm just seeing how are we going to make the pay scale where it's equitable and fair to everyone, with the understanding that if you take a job with the county, this is where you're going to be. This is what your pay range is, and this is what you deserve, because that's what the agreement is. It's kind of like a contract. It's kind of like, this is what the pretenses are. It's like my job. I sell so much, I get commission. That's what it says. That's what I'm going to get. That's my salary. That's my pretense. Okay?
May I comment there, and then you can, or...
Yeah, no. On the police lieutenants, you go to them, and they're all at 75, 82, 73, and I'm not saying they should be anywhere less, but then the captains are at, they're at 70, the highest paid one's at 74%, and you got 60%, 58%, 42%, in which the guys at 60% been with the county 32 years. And so, and I know I talked to Mr. Hammond about this as well, and Cronin, and I don't think it's right. I think that you should either, one, change the pay ranges and make them what's going to be realistic, so we're not living a lie hiring these people, or anybody who's had 30 years in the county should be at 90%. If you're at 35, you make 95%, or whatever is an equitable and fair number. And I know that's you're going to say, well, I don't know how we could afford that. Well, then change the pay range. Make it realistic.
I'm not in any place of talking about affording yet. I just want you to understand the process. So I'm sorry. I was trying to share it with Samantha, so.
You can move it as you...
One of the things that happened, well, first of all, let me start with this. The pay ranges overlap. So you always have the potential that somebody who's in a job that's subordinate to the one that you're in could potentially make more than somebody. So if you have a new administrator and you've got somebody who's very senior down below them who hasn't sought to move up or hasn't moved up, they could make more than the supervisor does. And that, we do have that in an instance that the councilman, and I think he shared his questions with everybody. So that definitely can happen. There's no avoiding that unless we change the ranges so that they don't overlap. Secondly, you have the possibility of reclassification. So the difference, I would say, between Councilman Brazel's job, where he comes in and they say, well, you can make up to this, is that when we hire people, we don't say, you have a promise of getting to the top of the range in X amount. We say that we're going to continuously look at where these jobs are against market. So if, for instance, captains, which did get looked in again this year, we actually look at the police department now every single year instead of every third year, or at least the commissioned officers there. They compare them to the same departments over and over, and they look because those are the ones that are similar departments to ours, or that we draw underlying officers for, or that are in our county, and they saw that they were within the comparison at the midpoint of the grade. And I know you guys hated this last year, but I just want to remind you that that's what we look at, because that supposedly a fully competent person gets to that midpoint. So we could have a higher or lower starting salary, we could have a higher or lower ending salary than all those places, but if we're running between 90 and 115% of that comparison group, then we don't adjust the pay range that they're in. So when we do, though, see that we're outside of that, we reclass them. And so that's why, in answering your questions, Councilman Brazel, I tried to use the lieutenants as an example, because several of the lieutenants, if we hadn't reclassed them last year, with last year and this year's ranges, they would have topped out and not been able to get the full raise. So, on the other hand, we had an officer who was made a lieutenant in 2021, who's been with us. I met him when I was a brand-new county councilor, so somewhere around 25, 26, 27 years, and he's at 51%, even though he's a brand-new lieutenant. So the classification does matter. Sorry.
Well, to me, it doesn't matter at all, because I'm proposing that we go ahead and any employee with 30 years should be at the top of their range. And if they're performing at a satisfactory level or above satisfactory level, let's say I'm going to throw out there 3.6, which 5 being the highest you can get and 1 being the lowest. So average employee would be between 3 and 4. I'd like to see us go ahead and, with anybody with 30 years, go ahead and move them to the top of the scale. And there's really not that many employees, and we're talking somewhere around $391,000 to do that. So we're not talking millions of dollars to move people up to the top of the range. But I think it's important that we qualify that those people still need to be performing at a little above average to obtain that, and that's what I'm going to propose tonight.
Is that in every department or just in?
That's countywide.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Some of those employees with over 30 years are already at the top. I don't know how they got to the top, and some of these others didn't, but I don't think it really matters.
I agree with you, but I don't think it matters either, because one of the captains was a lieutenant for 19 years, and then he's been a captain for 7. He's been with the county 42 years. And I asked him, I said, would you retire if you had an opportunity to make close to your range? He said, probably not, but, I'm not going to ever get it. I'm never going to make it. Just like the other 2 captains have been here 32 years. They're at 60%. What do you got to, I agree with what he said. I think that there should be the formula is inconsistent. And I don't know why. I don't know why, but it's inconsistent. You got 155 employees. My question is who is all at 85%? You got 155 employees over 85%. And why?
So I don't know if it matters, because you get a promotion, Joanne, from what I understand, and I'm not saying you wrote the formula or it's your fault. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's got to be adjusted, because if you've been with the county for lieutenant for 20 years and you want to, and someone retires, a captain retires, and then you go move up to be a captain, well, just because you're a captain for 2 years, you get penalized because you'd be at the top of the range at lieutenant at 20 years, but then when you go to captain, since it's a new position, you go to the mid or the lower part of the range. And I don't necessarily think that's right.
So one of the things that I think we've been looking at is, are the raises big enough when you get promoted? I think Sam's been looking really closely at that this year. And so that, you get 8% if you're in certain pay bands and 10% in others. And maybe that's where the problem is, moving between the grades.
Well, maybe so, but I think what I'm going to second Dave, if Dave made a motion, or if you're going to make a motion that.
When we get to the
or
budget.
when we get to it, I would suggest that we find out what it is. If you're at 30 years, you're at 90%, 35, 95, or whatever the fair thing, somewhere in that range, or full, whatever. I'd like to know if in fact it's 361,000, then I'm going to support Dave on his position on that, and
I think it's
get these guys where they need to be.
390.
Whoever it is. It's not just police department, it's the whole.
391,000. It's all it is. And I'd really like to see us look at maybe next year. I'm going to propose that if somebody's at 25 years, they probably should be at 75%.
Mr. Cronin?
I think however you do it, it's got to be transparent, and it's got to be logical, and it's got to make sense and understand reason. And the system we have right now, when you got some of these guys, I recognize these names, have been with the county a long time and are at 60%. We got a problem, okay? Now, I think you hinted on this a little bit. If you made a formula and you came up with it and said, okay, you have to have a merit rating of this number.
3.6.
Whatever number, maybe you have, if you have a combination of let's say a 3.6 and X amount of years of service, you qualify for this percentage range. If you have this many years and a 4.0 or 4.5, maybe you get to the other range. But I think it would be a hiring tool too, that for an employee that says, you know what, I don't know when I'm going to get within that range. Or, I've heard it might take 5 years. I heard it might take 40 years. If they know going into it that it's based on their length of service and how good a job they do, their merit rating, and they know about it up front, I think you're going to recruit more, and I think you're going to get people working harder to get that merit rating because they know that's going to affect their pay. Additionally, when you do these pay studies, the pay study that we did, the council secretaries and myself did out of post-dispatch data, nobody's mentioned the sergeants, and the sergeants were the ones who were getting paid, that their pay disparity was the greatest. I would ask any more pay studies. You throw out Crestwood, you throw out City of St. Louis, you throw out the ringers. Let's look who our guys are really leaving for. Let's look for departments that are either in this county or contiguous with our county. Because, those numbers, if you threw those numbers out in Crestwood and St. Louis, I think it was St. Louis City, and our guys are not getting paid enough. So I would like, rather than just knee-jerk and do something at this meeting, I would like to sit down with Joanne and figure out a more equitable way to do it for all police department and then also the entire county, because I think people that have been in the county for a lot of years need to know where they stand. If you've got X amount of years in and you get consistent merit ratings of this, you want to know what your percentage rating would be. And you can't do that right now, correct?
I'll just say, based off of our conversations we had last year, those were thrown out in the study this year. And we do the police study every year. So the Crestwood, that stuff is not in the study.
Okay, so the departments are all local departments that you compared with them? Mm-hmm. Can you share that? I've not seen that study. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, we can share with you.
And Joe, I don't want to make this complicated. I think we just need to get these people where they belong, and then look at some of the other things where there's inequalities.
So you're proposing, just so I'm clear on this, you're proposing bring them up to what, 100%?
Yes, if they have 30 years or
And a merit
more.
rating of
3.6.
For
Okay.
how long?
Because-
One time or consistently? The devil is always in the details,
That would give, I'm sure there's a few people there that maybe have 30 years and been sitting back and not performing like they used to do. So this gives them some incentive, and they'll have until next year when they do the evaluations in the fall to get up to where they think they need to perform. I doubt there's that many, maybe one or two, but
I will just say, if that's something that you're considering, please keep in mind that whatever you all decide to do, it will affect payroll taxes. It'll also affect the tax bracket that these individuals are in. It affects their loggers, life insurance, 401A match. There's a lot that goes into it when you change their pay, especially in that much.
yeah, I think there's another, I think with the benefits and everything, I think there's another 43,000 is all it is.
Where'd you get
To
those
do that.
numbers from? Did
I
Bob?
got them from
Bob, you want
finance.
to
Yeah.
come up here real quick?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr.
Sure.
Hammond a question real quick? Dave, what, are you planning to take the 390, whatever it is, take that from the 7% that we all were happy with? I mean, you're going to take that 7% and redirect it over here, or where are you going to find the 390,000?
Well, I think we can find it several different ways, but I don't want to do that right now. I just want to talk about where we need to be, and if it's that small amount, I mean, I don't have a problem taking, it's like, you know what the total is with benefits to do this, Bob?
I think your numbers were right. I think it was a little over $400,000 total for the fringes as well as the gross pay that would be generated by what you're proposing here.
Well, one of the problems too, guys, is O'Fallon just hired a captain, and what was his pay, 115,000, more than any of our captains make, and our captains have been here over 30 years, so it is a problem. And the other thing is sometimes it's pretty hard, in my industry and all industries, it's hard to retain employees. And if you don't give them a prize for being loyal to the county, why would they stick around? Because we do have people leaving, we have all kinds of good people leaving, and it's a problem.
People are leaving everywhere.
Yeah, right.
And
But they're gonna go for the better
it's-
prize, you would think.
Yeah, in part, that's true.
Yeah.
But it's everywhere. The job market is so volatile right now. We have a structure in place, Dave. What you're talking about is an idea, but it's not a plan yet. And there are a lot of twists and turns to what you're proposing. Both, all of you, all three of you, actually. There's a
Well,
lot of twists and turns to this that really need some forethought before you just flip a switch and say everybody's going to do this, because there's a lot of ramifications to it.
Well, I think it's pretty simple, and I just can't buy that.
Yeah.
If there's some ramifications, let's hear them.
Well, I think, Councilman, one of them that we'd need to figure out is, let's say that you move, I'll just use the captains because that's what's been thrown out there. You move them all to the top of it, and next year or the year after that, they're reclassified. That's probably gonna put another, 12 to 15,000 at the top of their pay range. Are we moving those people immediately up to the top of the pay range? I mean, is this a one-time thing? I think as Councilwoman Schneider started to ask her, is it ongoing? So, of the
What
30
happens when you-
years, if the position gets reclassed, do the 30 years always then just move to the top of the pay range?
It should.
Sounds like
It
it.
should
That's
be,
what
yeah.
you're
Why not?
suggesting.
It should be, yeah.
I don't see a problem with that.
I mean, or change the pay range. I mean, if the pay range is unrealistic, then don't give out unrealistic pay ranges. I mean, all I'm saying is folks say that there's no way they're going, these captains said that they're not, we have no way, we'll never hit the, we're at 60% for 32 years, really? I mean, I would feel the same way if I worked for the county. I'd feel kind of let down, you know, this is what I was told, this is the pay range, and here I'm still at 60%.
When they were reclassified in 15 or 16?
16.
In 16, we could have put them down a range, but we wanted to give them the greatest possibility. If we'd gone with a 302 at the time, then they would have been very near the top of their range, like a 90 or 95%
Correct.
for those people at that seniority level. But we didn't want to put them there. We wanted to give them the possibility of greater pay. So when we do the classifications, we have no idea what the merit ranges are going to be that are coming.
But Joy, when you say you're given the possibility of greater pay, no one's getting to those possibilities. They're not getting past the 75% point. That's what I'm saying. You probably got more employees that aren't over 85% after 30 years than you do that are over 85%. I mean, I didn't have that number. We didn't see that. All we saw was 155 employees were at past 85% on the pay range. And so, it's just, to me, it's you either adjust the pay ranges or you give them what they're told they're gonna make. It's black and white. You're right. I mean,
black
you
and
just-
white
Just
and-
simplify it.
Yeah, and, I'm just not talking police, I'm talking across the board.
Yeah, across the board.
So it's simple. You can make up a lot of reasons why we shouldn't do it, but we've got to this point because we weren't keeping up and we weren't letting people move up into the ranges to where they should have been a long time ago. And so we're just making a wrong a right by doing this now.
Are you suggesting we do this in one fell swoop, like in this next year, without any kind of studying in terms of, the devil is always in the detail, how it's going to affect everything? You're saying we should just pass that and just do it starting like?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think if you,
Should have done it a long time ago.
Yes.
Can I
We
ask?
should have
John a
studied
question?
it, I think, before we just
We-
decided to
but-
do it. I don't know.
Well, we do a lot of studies, and if we don't like the studies they've done, we're not even following them. I mean, what did we spend on the last study, $80,000 or something? We're not following that study. I mean, so what's the point?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, okay, but then why aren't we following the pay? I mean, so then if you say we're following the study, then why have a pay range that we're not even getting close to on the high end when they're here 30 years? So
No employees promised making the top of their range. So,
okay, Joanne, but that could be,
The
that's
merit
argumentative, because that's what me and Dave were saying. If you're presenting to someone, like you're at 91% on your pay range, so if you're gonna say, I'm not saying you don't deserve it, I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying, so you got these other guys that have been there a long time, they should be up there on the pay range, because that's what they see on paper.
and he has nothing to do with my salary, he didn't set it, I didn't set it. I've been in the same pay range for years, so the top hasn't moved for me. A lot of the people you're talking about have either moved ranges through promotions, or they've been reclassified. So
Mr. Chairman?
that's where you're seeing a lot of that.
Yes.
Ask a question. How many of the people with 30 years will not get anything?
I think it's 27.
And those are people who've stayed in the same pay range for most of their career, and therefore they were able to get to the top, because they never got promoted. But when people get promoted, then it becomes more difficult for them to get to the top. Those captains that you say are not as close as the lieutenants, if they'd all stayed as lieutenants, they'd be a lot closer to the top now, right?
Correct, yes.
So basically, it seems to me a lot of the problems comes when somebody gets a promotion, especially if it's late in their career, and they don't have time. I mean, if they'd have stayed where they were, they could get to the top, but by moving from a lieutenant to a captain or whatever, now they're in a bigger, they're a smaller fish in a bigger pond, and now they don't have the time. They only got, 4 or 5 more years before they retire. Yeah, they're going to have a hard time getting to the top. If they'd got promoted 10 years earlier, they'd had an easier time getting to the top. And I think that would be people on the top and people on the bottom as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you get a promotion, it's going to make it tougher to get to the top. And
Right.
if you don't get that promotion until the end of your career, you're right, it's maybe impossible.
But see, Steve, that doesn't, what you're doing though, in my view, is the captain I'm speaking of, been with the county for 42 years. He was a lieutenant for 19 years, right? So if he, I don't know where he was when he was lieutenant, but if he was at the very top of his pay range, then if they offered him the captain's job where he would come down, he would be hurting himself. And so that's not the point. We want those qualified personnel to take the position where they're getting equity for it and not penalize them for getting back at the beginning of the range. That
Joe,
doesn't make a lot of sense.
When you say he's coming down,
You don't mean that-
you don't mean he's coming down in pay. He's still making more money, but he's coming down in terms of where he is within the range.
Percentage-wise.
Yeah.
Well, but he
Yeah.
also, Nancy, according to like
I'm
these.
just trying to I don't
No,
know.
no,
I'm
that's
just
fine.
trying to understand what
No,
you're
if you
saying.
look at these lieutenants' pay, if you look at it, if you're at the top of the range
Yeah.
at a lieutenant, you're gonna be making whatever that number is, 105 or whatever. And then if you come to captain, like one of our captains, you're gonna go down to, 90? You're not at 105 anymore.
That's not a fair
His-
comparison, though,
no,
because that
his
particular
salary isn't
captain
going
never
down.
was a lieutenant. He went from sergeant to
No,
captain.
no, I would agree.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, that's a poor
No, but I would
example to
agree,
use.
but that's
none of-
the way the scale works.
I think the percentages can be misleading from time to time, and the only thing I'm worried about with, not the only thing, but one of the things I'm worried about, your example, is we have some employees right now who are at the top end of their scale, and they're not gonna get a merit increase, right?
Correct.
Like,
Right.
they're done.
Right.
What you're talking about, because you just said, move them to the top of their range for 22, and then if their pay range moves in 23, move them again to the top of their pay range because they've been here long enough. They're not gonna get moved anymore. They're gonna lock them, and they're not gonna see a pay rate. If they've been here 30, they may want to be here till 40. They're not going to get a pay range other than cost of living for the next 10 years because you just moved them to the top of their bracket and they're done.
What's wrong with that?
Well, I will-
They should be there anyway.
I will say we have 46 employees that are maxed out, and we hear constantly about how unhappy they are because they only get COLA. They don't get anything else, they're maxed out of their range.
Mr. Chairman, here's what I'm going to recommend to me and Dave. I'm going to ask Bob with the numbers you got, get solid numbers on what this looks like. If we move forward, here's what the numbers look like, and then we just put it up and vote on it, and whoever votes on it, votes on it. And then give the reasons, give reasons why it's here's the negative aspects, and then, I mean, if there are any, what is a potential risk of doing this? And I think there's a lot of probably more pluses than negatives, but maybe I don't see the whole picture. But I think we're kind of trying to talk this thing out, and it might be too complicated to,
Well,
you know.
I think it's a lot to chew on that of what you just said. Yes, sir.
I think the whole way county does payroll is overly complicated. And I also think it's not very transparent. If I went to work for county government, I'd want to know the formula, because to me, it looks like these percentage ranges figures, they're arbitrary. Who determines that Captain Cook should be at 74% and Mr. Tiefenbrand should be at
That's a great
at
point.
60%? So if we're going to do this, I appreciate what Dave's trying to do, but I don't like knee-jerk reactions. This thing needs to have a lot more thought in it. An example, the 30%, 30 years, if you're saying 100% at 30 years, if you want to really use this as a recruiting tool for new employees, you might want to say, you'll hit 70% at 10 years, you'll hit 80% at 20 years, you'll hit 90% at 25 and max that. Then you can use this to your benefit. Because if you just do this alone and you don't really fix the formulas, then you can't really recruit it. You can't use this as a recruiting tool because nobody knows exactly where they're going to stand. The other thing is, I know you spent a lot of money on software in the past, but just those post-dispatch numbers are going to come out pretty soon, and Brett Statler actually pulled those numbers up there. Joanne, I think you did too. They're really close to accurate for the county. Yeah, but
21.
once we get the new pay raise, okay, in place, I think we need to look at our competitors in the marketplace. What is the city of O'Fallon paying? What is St. Peter's paying, or whatever? So I think we need to fix it. I'd rather see us all agree that there's a problem, that we need to work together and fix it, than just try to do a knee-jerk reaction, get something passed tonight that might make us all feel better, but create more problems long-term.
I agree with that assessment. As I said at the beginning, there's a difference between an idea and a plan, and there are a lot of implications to what you all are talking about. And there are a lot of what-ifs, and because it is a complicated system, if you're going to overhaul it, you better take some time to work on it and get it right. I know that's not the answer, Dave, you're looking for, but launching forward with your idea, I think does some harm to a group of our employees, as I told you on the phone today. And I just think that you need to proceed with caution, have a goal in mind, and execute that, and make a commitment that before August of next year, you've got your plan formulated so that we can build it in. You know, we had meetings with all but one of you this year, talking about ideas for the budget and anything you wanted to see in the budget. And none of what we're talking about here tonight was brought up in those meetings. It was after the fact. So it's bad business to do things a spur of the moment and without proper preparation. So I would just caution you to execute a plan of putting something together, have an end date target so that it's ready to go by the time we formulate budget and issue budget letters next August.
If we're going to do that, I mean, I wish there was some way that we could at least give the people who are at the top of the range a cost of living. What about those people who they're not going to get anything, and now you're going to give somebody who's at, 60%, you're going to take them up to 95, which is a huge amount of money, and then there are these other people who don't even get a cost of living. So I think that's a problem as well, and I would
agree.
like to look at that to see
I
if
agree.
we could do something.
Dave and I spoke about that today, that there's a group of very loyal employees who have been here more than 40 years or high 30s,
Yeah.
who no longer,
They do get, they do
They
get
get
the cost
cost of
of
living.
I heard somebody say they didn't.
Yeah, they,
get-
No,
that's all they get.
COLA,
That's
but
all
they won't
get.
get they won't get a step.
So they're
So
gonna
when we're
get,
looking
But
at giving
still,
a
yeah.
5% merit and a 2% cost of living.
Right.
They're only going to get the
Okay.
2% cost of
I heard
living.
somebody
which
say
to-
something different,
To your
so
point
it's
of what I
probably
was
me.
saying earlier is, you're like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is cost of living's going to eat them.
Yeah.
Because this year, cost of living's actually 5%,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
It's-
So
it's a
if
lot more than
if
two.
I move those people up to the top of their range right now, and then that range won't get changed for them because we would play that percentage game again, they're going to get stuck and they're not going to get a raise. That means the money that they're going to get in '22, if they stay for 5 years, they're actually going backwards in pay from where they were going to be because they're not even going to keep up with cost of living. Yes, Joe?
What about a compromise? What if we gave those people that have been there 40 years at the top of their range, gave them the merit increase as well?
that's what I mentioned to Dave today on the phone.
Yeah.
was-
To me, because, if I was a dedicated county employee for 40 years, and I found out that my subordinates were getting a 7% raise, and I was only getting 2, that would make me feel warm and fuzzy inside, you know what I mean? So if we want to do something for those long-term employees, that might be a good thing to start with, okay?
Well,
can we move on?
I'm telling you, I worked for local government 34 years, and I wished I had the problem that, I was at the top of my range when I retired. I wasn't. And those people should be there. And
So
that's
can
what
I-
I'm saying.
Can I ask you this? Because we have another work session coming up in a week, right? So since this is your idea, can you work with Bob to try to, and Sam, maybe, to flush through these numbers
I have no problem with that.
and flush through your plan a little bit more and bring that back to us next week, that we can sit down and kind of go through this?
That's fine.
I don't think anybody here, and I don't want to speak for the council, but I don't think anybody here is opposed to moving people through the ranges. And I think that's why when we talked back in June, July, when you said, what is the priority for the council? And I said, we all agreed we want to move people through these ranges. And the problem that we had in the past is we haven't been able to give them the merit increases to move them through the ranges, and that's why they've been stuck. We've only been giving cost of living because we haven't had the money to be able to do it. So this year, our priority was move people through the range. That's why they got a 5% merit increase this year. The purpose of that merit increase was to do exactly what you two are talking about, is push people through the ranges in a way that makes sense. They have the good eval. If you have a good eval, you get the full range. If you don't, you have a percentage of that. I believe I have that correct.
Yes, you get the COLA, yeah.
So everybody gets the COLA, but the 5% is the variable based on your eval. So
And that's a 3.6, just to clarify that?
3.0.
3.0.
3.0.
yeah, so Dave's talking about a 3.6 to get people to the top of their range. I don't know that I'm on board with the top of their range at 30 years, but I would probably be good with an 80, 85, 90, give them some growth for for the rest of that time to be there, but that's not something that we need to hash through in 14 minutes. It's,
Chairman?
sir,
On that, I think the idea of doing something for people at the top, I think that's a great idea. I think it needs some thought and need some numbers to go with it. Bob has already suggested, we start thinking about next year, okay? Well, I mean, we can change the pay structure anytime that four of them want.
We can.
And I sign it, right?
Right.
So, my own biggest problem with this is it's a last minute again, just like we had last year, okay? And I don't think telling Mr. Hammond he's got to wait a year, to get something for these people, I don't think that's right either. But, it's either, it doesn't need to take a year, but I don't see how it can be done in a week if we really want to do our due diligence on this.
I agree.
Mike?
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. So the other questions I had, I'd sent these out, written questions.
thanks, Bob.
I don't know if it's Joanne or Bob, but did we resolve the payment problems with certain employees that when we switched from 5 days to 4 days, 4/12s, there were quite a few people who weren't getting their paychecks. They were shy 2, 3, and 4 days, and then they were told they would be able to collect those when they retired. Do we have that straightened out yet?
That's kind of what, we have it straightened out. Let me just go back. That isn't quite what happened. So we had constant payroll changes because of how far away payday was from when things were due. So Bob restructured it, and for 2 years, on the months where we had 3 payrolls, we took back a day. What ended up happening was in the 12-hour shifts departments, there were some, and even when they were on 8 1/4 before they went to 12, there were some people who didn't work that day and shouldn't have had that taken out of their check to be paid the next time. So it wasn't that we were holding it till they retired, it was all shifting back a day at a time. So 150 people have been paid for that. We have,
When were they paid?
last week.
Oh, you just scored it up just recently?
Yeah, it took a long time to track down who was working on which days, because it went over 2 years. That was in the answer that I sent you, that we would have it done by last week. They got it done Monday night or Tuesday night, I think. But let me just mention to you that we still have another department to go, where we think it's a much less problem. And then on top of that, we have a few people who moved jobs. And so Bob's people are still tracking them down. So we still have a dozen or 2 dozen people that we are trying to get to the bottom of how many of those days we owe them. But we'll have that done early within December. It'll all be completed.
Okay, and then the other question was, in the finance department, there's a $181,000 jump in finance salaries, and there's 3 positions where the finance department are being recommended for reclassification. Is this a case where they're outside their pay range and they're reclassifying them so they can make more money? Is that what you're referring to when you say reclassify them?
Yes, so. Wait.
No, they were
Which one?
outside their pay range.
No. This is a case of whenever we look at their midpoint and we evaluated it, they were in the wrong pay grade. Their pay grade had changed, so we had moved their pay grade.
So, okay, so I'm trying to understand this. So if certain people are in the wrong pay range, but they reclassify them so they can make more money, I see that's, I think what Mr. Cronin was saying, there's inconsistencies here. So how do you determine if someone gets a reclassification because they need to make more money rather than just move them up into pay range? And it seems to me that some of the stuff we're talking about with police captains and police lieutenants and things like that, that you could say, well, then we can just reclassify. I mean, it's not, I don't see the consistency here.
So those are 2 different things. When we do the compensation analysis, we're looking at the position and what its range is in comparison to midpoint, in comparison to the market midpoint. We're not looking at employees. For employees to move through that range they've been assigned to, that's when you're talking about merit increases, COLA increases, education attainment. It's those things that move them through the range. So when I do my analysis, it's not about the individual person and where they are in the range. It's simply looking at the pay range and making sure that range is the midpoint is in alignment with the market midpoint.
But see, when you say that, when you say it's up to someone, let's say the boss, to make those administrative decisions or to make a recommendation with a letter, right? Who does that? Who makes that decision? Who makes the decision for the finance people to be reclassified? Joanne, you do?
No, it's part of
You
your
do?
study, yes.
Okay, so who makes the decision for the captains to have a or to have a go up in the pay range?
The reclassification.
No, not
I'm talking
reclassification,
about
but
the
go up in
range.
in their point of percentages.
If it's a merit raise, everybody gets the same merit.
No, but if they need to move up on their pay range, how do they get from 60 to 70%? Who makes that decision? How does it get to that point?
Merit raises and educational raises.
And who does that? That's my question. Who makes the merit rate? Who makes that decision?
There's a formula.
Who?
We do.
You guys,
As a council,
yeah, the council
there's
does.
a 5%.
Doesn't make any sense. Come on.
Yeah.
It does make sense.
We don't vote, we,
Vote on it in the budget on what the merit rate.
well, then I'm gonna retract all my merit, I mean, okay, this is why we gotta talk about this. This just doesn't, you got certain people getting certain higher percentages and getting moved, reclassified, and then you got other guys not, it almost seems like favoritism here or
Right,
there.
it's
I'm not
not-
saying
it's
it
not
is,
about the person,
but it's
it's
not
about the
consistent. That's
position.
all I'm saying. There's no consistency.
Where they are in the range has to do with their work history.
I know, but that's what Dave is saying. He's saying who determines that? It's like, so I called the chief. You told me that the chief has to write a letter to say that they should be moved up. And I called him. He didn't know, he wasn't notified of that, huh?
Special review.
He was several months ago, but not when he took his job. So if you put a position, so any kind of director,
We talked
that,
about that last year.
yeah,
And I
if
don't
you,
think he's here yet, but he will tell you that. I talked to him multiple times.
so then every person who wants to go up in their pay increase, you're gonna expect all these employees calling them. There should just be a formula, because all of them are, well, how come I can't get moved up? Tom did, or Jed did, or whoever. I don't know. I just find that very problematic. That's all, you know.
All right. Anything else to discuss this session?
Running out of time.
All right, so did we solve the problems of the world? It didn't feel like it. So Dave's going to follow up with Bob, try to get us a little further down the road. If we can get there in a week, we get there in a week. If we don't, we'll deal with that next week at 6 o'clock. So we'll keep our budget session on the clock for 6 o'clock next Monday, and we will do that. Anything else? Yes, sir.
If we don't get something worked out by next meeting, I would like a commitment by folks over there and folks here that we work on this and have something ready for a specific date. Because we at least owe it to the folks that work for the county to look at this and look at it damn hard. That's my request.
What day did he say?
Fair enough?
Oh, pick a date.
All right. Anything further for the work session? With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the work session.
So moved.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So we're out of work session. We will do our regular meeting starting in 6.5 minutes. If you are planning on speaking tonight, please make sure that you fill out a speaker's card, and we will get the meeting started at 7 o'clock.